We're live, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. If at some point throughout the meeting you find that you do, please declare it at that time. Deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. We have a presentation today of the 2022 budget, draft 1. So I will be passing it over to Jocelyn, our treasurer, at this point.
Thank you, and good morning, Your Worship, and members of council, staff, and viewers. If it's okay, I'll just share my screen and we'll follow the presentation. Perhaps Dina or Your Worship, if you could confirm that you can see the presentation screen.
Yes, we
That's
can.
great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so today, this is our first draft of the 22 budget presentation that we bring forward just for your information. And just trying to move down the screen here. Okay, so we'll begin with the budget schedule, and the meeting today is to provide the start of the budget process. Staff have reviewed the 22 budget requirements with the CAO, and this presentation is a summary of the opening budget. And the schedule provides for a more detailed discussion with council members and the leadership team on October 21st. This is when the department heads will present their draft 1 budgets. And one of the challenges of presenting information is the ever-changing status of the items. So therefore, during the presentations, more current information may be available, and staff will highlight that verbally where appropriate. There is a public meeting scheduled for November 10th to present proposed rates and fees for 2022. And this meeting will include draft 2 budget changes and the proposed rates and fees and the water wastewater update and proposed fees. The third draft of the budget is scheduled for December 2nd. At this meeting, the 4-year operating and 10-year forecasts will be presented for information, and there are usually only minimal changes for this draft. The public meeting for the budget is held on December 14th at 7 p.m. The leadership team will present the individual budgets, and staff will provide a recommendation to council to approve the budget as presented and bring a bylaw forward at the December 21st council meeting. The budget focus is on supporting the various priorities that council established at the beginning of this council term. And particularly, the following priorities are supported. So item 1, beachfront development. And 2, building a new twin pad arena and library. 3, promoting affordable housing. And 7, maintain the financial health of the town while meeting the service needs of the community. And while all of these priorities are considered, those particular ones are highlighted as specific items in the budget. So with a high-level overview, the budget shows the total increase is from 94 million in 2021 to 100 million in 2022. And the change in the total budget, both capital and operating, is 6.5 million. Of that change, 4.2 million is related to the capital program. Some of the capital projects that were budgeted in 21 will carry over into 2022. And one of the main capital projects for 22 is the new arena and library. And there is 29.8 million accounted for within the total 57 million capital program. With this first draft of the 22 budget, the proposed tax rate increase is 2.15%. This slide shows the proposed draft 1 tax rate percentage as compared with our municipal comparators' 21 tax rates. For Wasaga Beach, the tax rate percentage is 0.58926%, which is one of the lower rates on the chart. Note the other municipal rates are not yet showing their 22 tax rates, so this demonstrates the town's continued financial strategy to maintain a reasonable tax rate. The tax rate increase on an average home with an assessment value of $330,000 will be an increase in the municipal portion of the tax bill of approximately $40 for the year. When the tax rate percentage increase is merged with the county and the education tax rate portions, the total increase is 1.23%, and that is the total percentage tax rate increase at this time. These rates may change as the county and education ministry sets their 22 rates. The total operating expenditures for 22 is $44 million. This slide shows how the expenses are spent by the various committees and some of the service areas. So the largest portion is spent through Public Works, which is 38%, and followed by Community Services at 18%. Our police budget consumes 12%, and corporate services and remaining general government expenditures are 10 and 9%. And the remaining services are less than 10% each. The cost drivers for the increase of $1.2 million in the operating budget are COLA and STEP, which average around $245,000. The police budget is showing an increase presently of $99,000. However, that will change in draft 2. It does decrease. The library budget increased by $30,000 and the planning department by $200,000. For both the recreation and library departments, the phase-in for the new operating levels when the new building opens has increased by $200,000 for each department. And while this is the last year of the planned phase-in period, during the ramping up of the two departments in the new facility, it may carry into 2023. The debenture payments show $334,000 increase, and I'll discuss those later on another slide. There are a few other smaller increases, and finally, the IMF grant, which is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, continues to decrease by 15% each year, which impacts some of the operational costs as the grant is used to help support some of those costs. There is more interest income in the budget, which helps to offset some of the additional expenditures. The capital program total is approximately $57 million. The new arena and library are making up the larger portions of the expenditures. With construction throughout 22, a major portion of the project is included in the budget, with the balance carrying into 2023. Water and wastewater projects also have a high level of expenditure at 14%, and the remaining major portions of the budget are spent on roads and bridges and other public works initiatives. The major projects in the capital program, I'll just give you some of the dollar amounts associated with them. The new arena library building is $29.7. The water wastewater program is $7.9 million. The bridge and roads works are $5.1 million, with the West End Depot another $5 million. Parks are 1.8 and fleet is 1.7. And a few other program areas, one of which is administration. This mainly consists of the federal gas tax grant being transferred to the reserve and the 1% capital contribution for asset management, which is transferred to the capital replacement reserve. So it's a little early still in the process for forecasting the reserve balances. However, the following does provide sufficient information to follow the planned reserve activities. The general reserves, which also includes the reserves for water and wastewater, have been used in the budget in the following ways. Water sewer is using 4.4 million. The new arena, 4.5 million. Public works is 1.7 million, and the library will draw 700,000 from the general reserves. Then this is a total decrease in general reserves of 14 million. However, we also have funds going back into the general reserves of 3.8 million. And this includes the UMF grant, which is added to the capital asset replacement reserve at approximately $1 million. We have wastewater reserves increasing by 1.6 million, and the arena library phase-in will be added to the reserves at 700,000. So the net change in the general reserves is a decrease of about 10.1 million. The deferred revenue, or the reserve funds, which are mainly development charges, federal tax grant, and the OSIP grant, they are used for the library with 5.1 million of the DCs. The West End Depot is using 4.9 million, and the Beechwood Drive water main uses $1 million, and other PW projects, public works projects, use 2.2 million. So the total use of these deferred funds is 14.9 million. We also have contributions back into these deferred fund accounts from OSIP and federal gas tax grants. So that puts back 1.9 million into the reserves. And further, we add to these deferred revenues throughout the year from the development charges that are collected. And these are estimated at approximately 6 million. So the net change expected in the reserve funds is approximately a $7 million decrease as we use those deferred revenues. So with the construction financing loan being utilized for the new arena and library building, the debt level will rise in 2022. The total increase is approximately 20 million. And while the construction financing loan is not a debenture as of yet, there is some opportunity to pay some of this financing back before rolling this short-term debt into the long-term debenture. It is still likely that a major portion of the construction financing will be debentured and hence become long-term debt. But this is the advantage of the construction financing that gives us some flexibility for the next few years. So the construction financing instrument will continue to be used in 2023 as the building is completed. The remaining debentures are decreasing each year when some will be completed by 2026. To service, I'll just move to the next slide. To service the, oops, sorry, I think I went one slide too forward. The cost of this debt, the principal and the interest payments for 22 will be 1.8 million as compared to 1.5 million in 21. So the carrying cost is still relatively low as the construction financing carries at a very low interest rate during the 5-year term of financing. As the payments for the arena library begin to be made, the carrying cost will increase from 1.8 million to 2.5 million. The total principal and interest payment portion for the arena library is approximately 1.2 million. And an important benchmark for the debt carrying cost is the annual replacement limit, or ARL. And this is, the province provides us with this annual repayment limit each year. And currently we are authorized to spend 7.8 million in carrying cost each year. We are presently carrying only 1.8 million, which is low relative to what we are able to carry. And our maximum debt will probably carry between 2.5 and 3 million in a couple of years. So we are still very well below our annual repayment limit. So this slide provides a preliminary forecast of the expected tax rates based on information known from draft 1. In 22, presently we are at a tax rate increase of 2.15%. And in the next 4 years, we estimate the rate increases to be 2.35, 2.47, 2.66, and 2.36. And these are just estimates at this time. These are based on specific assumptions, such as the returning of the assessment-based phase-in increases. And it's important to note that while the current situation without phase-in is temporary, it is necessary for long-term financial solutions. However, the town is able to address the shortfall for last year and this year through ongoing efficiency gains, our reserves, and our COVID grant funding that we've received. So draft 2, we have some changes that we've learned about, and as new information arrives. So some items we expect we will be updating will be the MVCA budget that has been received and will be reviewed. Presently, there's increases of about $23,000 for this outside agency. The policing budget was received, and we should be able to see a decrease of about $29,000 in draft 2. As staffing changes are considered for draft 2, there will be impacts and changes. And a recent pending decision regarding a new fire truck will change the budget in draft 2, depending on the decision that's made. Our reserve adjustments will be used to adjust for tax rate stabilization as we move through draft 3. So in summary for our budget deliberations, we have today are just our first overview and opening of the 22 budget for draft 1. And then on October 21st, this will be the main meeting where council and the leadership team will be able to provide detailed discussions and questions. And on November the 10th, we have at 7 p.m. Our public meeting. And this is where our proposed 22 rates and fees are in that public meeting. On December the 2nd, for draft 3, along with the financial forecasts, we provide those. And then our public presentation is on December 14th and is also a 7 p.m. meeting. And at that time, staff will request the permission to bring the budget forward for approval, which would come forward through a bylaw on December 21st. So thank you, Your Worship and council members. That concludes the presentation. If there are specific questions that you have and would like to ask, if we're able to answer them at this time, we may, or we would be able to come back on the 21st prepared with responses to those questions. So I will turn it back over to you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jocelyn. I'll just get you to take your presentation down so I can see the screen. There we go. Thank you. I'll open it up for any questions at this point. As Jocelyn said, if there's something that can't be answered now, it will come back when it's discussed at a future meeting. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Your Worship, and certainly thank you, Jocelyn and staff for this presentation. There's a couple little items in the binder that you gave us, and it's not specific to line items, it's just on the general stuff. So first, I wanted to, one of the things you're talking about, the COVID financing, and you say there's a risk that the funding may be disallowed for the purposes because we use some for capital, not operations. I just wondered if we had any idea approximately what those numbers are. Are we talking hundreds of thousands? Are we talking 50 million? Or, well, I know we didn't get that, but you know what I mean? So if it is disallowed, what kind of correction might there be on that? Do you happen to know that, or can you bring it back to me at some point?
Through Your Worship, yes, it's approximately around 100,000, 125,000. I did speak with the representative regarding the grant when we were first doing this, and explained that in order to achieve the operational need, there was a requirement of capital. And the best way to explain that is in order to get the seating in the Treasury Department, for example, to be safe between the desks, we required new arrangements. So we had to purchase new furniture. And she just suggested that I just explain that in the reporting, and didn't really see it. She said, we just need to understand how it helps support operations. So that's what we've been using as our guide in anything that we've used, is that it's been driven by an operational need, but required some capital support in order to achieve what was needed. And I haven't had any feedback further on that to date.
Thank you. If I may continue a bit here, further on, you're talking about the municipal assessment base being frozen. I want to note that's not frozen just for Wasaga Beach. That's frozen for every community in the province. And I believe we're based on the 2016 tax roll. That was the last time was the last kind of trigger date for the assessment. So my question is, do we have any inkling that when the municipal assessment comes back, whether it will take into account the years that it has been frozen?
Again, through your worship, we don't know. We have asked people questions about that. No one has an answer. I do not think that they will give us back the years that have been foregone. I believe they will just reinstate. They are using the 2016 current value assessment, CVA. That's where we're based at. They, I believe, have the 2020 current value assessment, but it has not been rolled out yet. So there's two things that could happen. They could return the phasing in process and update from the 2016 CVA to the 2020. However, when they will do that and whether they'll do it retroactive or not is unknown.
Okay, and I suspect that the 2020 CVA will be considerably higher than the 2016 CVA. But anyway, two more little items, if I may. One is, and I do want to note, because at some point people are going to be loose with facts. I heard that our debt load, kind of the carrying rate or amount, is 1.8 million, and that technically the town could be borrowing 1.8 million repayment. It could be up to 7 million, is without, according to the provincial guidelines. So what I'm getting at is our debt load and debt structuring is extremely conservative, and our construction financing is at 0.75%, which is an amazing rate. So did I hear that correctly, both those points?
Yes, through your worship. You have heard that correctly. Our debt carrying costs are low relative to what we are able to carry based on the formula that the province uses to calculate what each municipality is able to borrow and carry. And sorry, your second question?
I don't really remember it. It was brilliant at the time.
I apologize.
That's fine. My last point, and again, this is merely to make sure we're very clear, is right now the proposal is 2.15% increase. Knowing that in draft 2 there will be some adjustments and all that. In your report, which I think is public, at some point it says, during the stage of preparation of draft 1, the budget showed a 9.7% tax increase. And that was before staff put on their thinking caps and got out their scalpels. I suspect that someone, because it happened last year, is going to be saying we're talking about a 9.7% increase. We're not. We never were. It's not in there. What we've got is the original wish list came out, and staff got on there and said, what's a need versus a want, and how are we going to do this? And they packaged it. So right now, we're looking at 2.15%. It may adjust, and I get that. But I just know that somewhere, someone's going to be writing, and they'll round up too. They're not going to say 9.7. They're going to round it up to 10 and maybe 12% potential increase. So I want to be clear that we're talking at a 2.15%, give or take, over the next 2 drafts. Is that an accurate depiction of what we have here?
Yes, and through your worship, you are correct. And that 9.7% is very common. It is normal when we first bring everything in and bring all the items forward, that we are generally anywhere in the range from 9% to up to, it can be higher.
Don't say it.
But the once we work together and bring in the revenue streams that are all needed and look at what actual costs we can proceed with in that current budget year, that's when we bring it down, and it came down to a much more reasonable rate, and the rate is 2.15%. We are not in any way at all at the 9% or higher level. It is 2.15%.
Yes, thank you. And my point being that the staff worked very hard to give us conservative and realistic numbers. So I want to make sure that the public's aware of the amount of work that goes in prior to this meeting to make this meeting so that we're not all just clutching our chests and falling over with terrible rates. So good job. Thank you. And I look forward to continuing to see this roll. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jocelyn, and thanks for asking those questions, Councillor Foster, because I've already seen a few things on Facebook that were shocking and totally not true. So I'll open it up if there's any other comments or questions at this point. Deputy Mayor Bray?
Sorry, I have a floating mouse. Tiny little question, and then just no, actually probably two. So when we go through the report, there's only 8 months of actual. I get that. And we're comparing it to a 12-month budget for this year and of course for next year. But there's a lot of lost revenue this year due to COVID. Things weren't happening as they normally happen, but there's also a lot of lower expenses. So when you look at the numbers, they do seem to be lower than the lost revenue in most departments. And I'm talking everything from events to, I don't know, can't remember, kind of going through the whole budget. So I'm just wondering if we're expecting a surplus this year and if that will impact the budget, or is the surplus, I guess we don't know about the surplus until into 22. So is it too late at that point to actually impact this budget? So that's my first question.
Jocelyn?
Thank you, through your worship. So we haven't actually forecasted the year end yet. That's the step that comes next. And generally we do see a surplus at the end of the year, and those surpluses are put into our reserves. And so it doesn't necessarily change next year other than there's just more reserves available to draw on if we need to. And some of the surpluses that arise are because there's carryover. So we just move it to reserve and carry it over and bring it into the 22 budget through that process. And with regards to the COVID, we look at both the revenue shortfalls and the expenditure savings, and we net those together and then see how much COVID grant funding do we still need in order to achieve what we were expecting based on our budget. So it's a bit of a process we go through. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but let me know if I haven't.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it's coming forward again. You did answer it in that it won't actually impact the bottom line of this one, but the money's still there. If we didn't spend it, it goes into reserve so that we can, like we're doing with this budget, draw from the reserves when there's a need to do so.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then my other one is just a teeny tiny little one, and it's an idea I talked to a couple of staff members about earlier in the year with regards to the Healthy Community Network. We obviously haven't met in 18 months, and Healthy Communities reports in through planning. And my discussion 6 months ago was maybe it would be a better fit to move them over to Public Works. So seeing in the budget, I know it's still there under planning, so I thought it was time to throw that suggestion out there in the public. And as well, the budget is $3,000, which is what it has been for the entire 7 years I've been on council. So I'm just thinking that if we want our advisory committees to accomplish a little more, we might consider putting a couple of $1,000s more into their budget. Again, $2,000 over 100 million isn't much, but I thought today was just a good opportunity to mention it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I saw Jocelyn making notes, so I'm sure she'll take that back to the team and discuss it. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in reference to the Deputy Mayor's suggestion around the funding for the committee, I don't think we can isolate one committee and say, you know, because they've asked for something, therefore we should be increasing that particular budget. We have a lot of advisory committees. If we're going to start looking at increasing the allocation to those committees. I think we need to look at all of the committees to determine whether or not there's a need to adjust their funding as well. I just don't agree with the concept of picking one out of the blue as because we happen to sit on that committee as being a necessity. I think we should go to look at them all. My other question is, with respect to your comment about the NVCA, I think you, if I remember back in the presentation, it's about $20,000 increase in the request for the NVCA for this year. It's not a request, it's a demand. I didn't see the rationale for that increase. So at some point, Jocelyn, did I miss it? Or at some point, can you provide whatever the NVCA has given you as justification for this increase? Because quite personally, I don't see the need to continually increase the budget to the NVCA. I think that's something that they're under review. There's been a huge review ongoing. And I think it's time to just sit pat and wait and see what that review brings forward before we start handing over another $20,000 or $30,000.
Thank you for those comments. And I would agree that we do need to look at that. There is a regional government review going on that includes the conservation authorities through the planning piece of it, but we're also looking at updating our MOUs with them. So I think that there does need to be further discussion at a future meeting for that. Jocelyn, is that something that we can bring forward?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As I had mentioned in the presentation, it is under review, and what I meant by that was we have not presented to Council yet the budget that we've received from the MVCA. So we will be sharing that and bring forward a staff report for you to consider further discussions on that item. And then we can move forward in draft 2 with any changes for MVCA.
Okay, and I know in the past, we actually had the NVCA present to Council to justify and allow Council members the opportunity. So we may want to look into that as well.
I will, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Bray, did I see your card up again?
Yes. Sorry, just a follow up to Councillor Wells. I wasn't just requesting, I guess I was just requesting something for the Healthy Community Network. But I don't see anything in the budget for the Tourism Advisory Committee. And so I agree that all committees should probably be reviewed, and they all are funded at different amounts. I think over the years, if they spent it, they maybe applied and got more. So I absolutely agree that all the advisory committees should probably be reviewed, because certainly the money doesn't go as far as it did 8 years ago. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions of Jocelyn? Okay. Any final words, Jocelyn, before I read the motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just guess I would like to say thank you to the team, because I think this is a very good opening budget. And from what I'm aware of, that's coming for changes going forward. I think we'll be able to accommodate things well and have a very reasonable, sustainable tax rate in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree with that. We're very competitive looking at our fellow municipalities. We're reasonably priced to live here, and I think we're on a good path with this budget, so thank you. Seeing nothing else, if I can get a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Foster and Councillor Watson, that Committee of the Whole as Budget Committee recommend to Council that it receive the Treasurer's report on the first draft of the 2022 operating and capital budget for information and discussion. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We do have a closed session on the agenda in the event Council wants it. So I will ask, is there anyone who wants to move in camera at this point? Okay, I'm seeing none. So we will move on to adjournment. I'm just double checking with the clerk. I don't have to read that because we didn't go in camera, item 5.1. So we will move straight to adjournment.
It's simply a receive for information, so you could actually pass that motion.
Okay, I'll look for a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kinney and Deputy Mayor Bray, that Council receive the information provided in closed session for information regarding staffing matters, and that would be the information that we received in our binders. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Now we will move to adjournment, and I will just remind everyone that we have to go into another link for our special council meeting that is directly following this one. So we are adjourned, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Worship?
Oh,
Excuse
Councillor
me, sorry.
Foster?
I believe the meeting was set for 11 a.m., which
Oh.
means we can't start it before then. So we do have to recess until 11 a.m. if council is okay.
Okay, my apologies. I thought we did it directly following this one. Councillor Foster, is that what you're going to correct
That
me
was
on?
my request to speak was, are we going by the hour? Anyway, thank you. See you at
Yeah.
11.
We'll see you at 11. Okay, thanks, everyone.